Righto, so I'm with Killian Reardon, Head of Performance here in Glasgow Warriors.
How are you, Brian?
Good.
Thanks for having me on.
You're very welcome. So is today day off?
Technically today's day off. We're coming to the end of a 10-week run, so today's a day off and next week is a week off, so it's a bit more relaxation time.
Yeah. Is it pretty heavy going? So like when you have, you say a 10-week run, you're like in a lot that's heavy going, then you get weeks off sporadically throughout the season?
Yeah, like on balance, you actually do pretty well on time off, but when you're in it, you're really in it. So for example, the last 2 weeks, we played Stormers on Sunday and we played Perpignan the following Saturday. Because we were essentially playing a different team in the Stormers game and the Perpignan game, we came back in on Monday to train the Perpignan team. After we played Perpignan on the Saturday, we didn't travel home till the Sunday because it was such a late kick-off, and you're back in to turn around for a Friday night game against Bath last week. So when you get into when coincidentally a cycle ends up like that, it can get tough. But in the middle of that, we had this amazing night against Stormers here. We beat them, and then the next week you're in the southwest of France for 2 days, and it's kind of like you haven't got that much to complain about, you know. So, and Glasgow are on a good run. We're winning, which is the only thing that really matters in a day.
Yeah. Is the vibe around places, like you're in Leinster for quite a while and now you're here, and is it a big difference in the vibe around places when you're on a winning run, losing run?
So I was very lucky in Leinster. Anyone who's in Leinster is very lucky in the sense, or anyone who has been in Leinster during the last number of years is lucky, because the organisation is just set up for sustained success, and they've just figured that side of it out. That doesn't guarantee that stays around forever, but for now they've figured that side of it out. And you almost kind of take it for granted. And first year when I came over here, it was just a difficult year for lots of reasons, COVID, and we had to kind of we weren't performing consistently, particularly away from home. It was a tough time. And now this year, Franco's come in. He's made a massive difference. One of the things that I'm proud of that we did in the performance side of things is we spent a huge amount of time in that first year, even when things were difficult, in just getting down. Here is what the foundation of performance will look like. Here are the pillars that are gonna drive it on. We'll get these in place. We'll keep improving our processes as much as we can, and eventually this will come to fruition. And then Franco coming in this year, he is a big believer in the performance side of things, in athletic performance. He kind of sees that as being core to the game model, which means it's a great place to be for guys like me. And what's been done here in the last 6 months has been really good to be part of.
Yeah, you're flying it.
We're in a good spot at the moment, so a long way at last.
Yeah, good stuff.
A long way at last.
Yeah, and so head of performance, what does that entail, or like your role?
So, my background is obviously strength and conditioning. That's where all guys like me really come up through. But I suppose once you get to the head of department level, or different guys have different opinions on what that should look like. But what we've done here is we've amalgamated a few different things into a performance department. Instead of having a strength and conditioning department and a medical department and a doc and a nutrition department, myself and Andrew Bogue, who's our head of medical, we brought it together, and we did that really from day one once we came over here and made a team, so that we're all on the same page. Strategies are aligned, so that the right hand knows what the left hand is doing. We've got Liam Walsh, who runs our academy program. He's been brilliant in terms of aligning the pathway of players and at the level below, and now he's working with our junior academy, which is even younger players. So there's really a coherent development pathway for guys coming through. So where I think I can add value to that is to facilitate those guys to keep creating that strategy that goes across levels, goes across different locations, and keeps the talent pathway coming through, and also to make sure that applies to staff, so that, you know, the thing about, I suppose, the athletic performance side of things, you've got one guy at every level.
Yeah.
So really, what good looks like, if you want to sustain a pathway of delivering players, is that your coach pathway keeps going as well, so that the show keeps going on. So it's not, well, yeah, that's probably the best way I can explain that.
Yeah, so it's upskilling everyone, all the staff as well, and the pathways themselves as well as players.
Yeah, and it's not like I do all the upskilling and all the teaching and leadership side of things. It's everybody's involved. So Damien's brilliant at bringing Liam and Robin along. You know, he's got his background in rehab, strength and conditioning. Now he's got 2 years leading his own program, you know, so he coordinates a huge amount of especially the athletic development side of the program. And then, you know, I suppose ultimately, if we are successful in developing staff in the same way that we should be successful at developing players, you should see these guys go on and be successful as coaches, athletic performance coaches as well. So, yeah, it's too early to tell if we will be, but that's the aim.
Yeah, good stuff. And why did you get into S&C, or why did you decide to get into it when you did?
It's probably like everyone who gets into that space. You're into sports. Maybe you're not really good enough at any particular sport to have your own career, but you want to be around it. You're interested in performance, and like the base tier of performance is the physical side of it. It's, you know, get your body right, getting your nutrition right, and so it's kind of an entry point. It's an entry point to the idea of performance, and then, you know, you do that for a number of years and you start to look at other areas. But yeah, I think that's, you know, if you ask 10 guys with an S&C background, it would be something like that.
Yeah. And how did you get into it? Where did you went to college, or how did you start out?
So I always knew that I should do this, but, well, not always, but I knew that I should do this as I was sort of coming towards leaving certain CAO and that, but it didn't, because I was coming out of college coming out of school, in 2005, which is when everyone was getting business degrees and making a load of cash really early. So I went to Trinity to do BESS, and in spite of myself, and hated it, and dropped out after a year and a half. Spent a year kind of floating, and then went back to DCU in 2008 to do sports science, which is what I should have done the first time, but no regrets on that. I got to have some fun in the meantime, and I was probably, I think I was 21 when I went back in, and I was very, I was conscious, or I felt like I was behind the 8 ball, so I kind of had my eyes fairly well fixed on the prize. I knew I wanted to work in professional sport. I knew that Leinster offered a full-time internship to third years, so from 2008 I knew 2011 that's the internship, and we'll go from there, because as you know, in Ireland, if you want to work in professional sport, it's rugby really, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's probably better now with the sports campus and so on, but at that time.
I love that. So you, at 21, I love that, when you were going into college, you knew what path you wanted to go down. Like, you knew where you wanted to get to. Like, it wasn't like, oh, I'll go do this degree and see what happens. It's like, I kind of think I want to work in sport and I'll see what happens. I love that, like, you're looking down the line and thinking, like, Leinster do that, and that's what I'm going to go for. And
well, I've also tested it by doing the other thing. Like, I'll go and do a business degree and see what happens.
Yeah.
And then quickly realising that was a mistake. So So yeah, I mean, and that worked out. I did that for a year, the internship for a year, and then I kind of worked in Leinster's regional system with some of their development squads on a part-time basis during the summer. You'd have done the summer programs. We probably crossed paths
Yeah,
even.
we could have.
Yeah, what did you?
I was with the Leinster schools 09, 10.
So I missed you by a couple of years.
Okay.
2012 would have been the first time I did those summer programs. But yeah, so you've been through that same process, but as a player.
Yeah. And do you still do that now? Do you still like you said, like 2 years out, that's what I want to do, or do you still kind of do that now? Like,
Yes, I try to. So I think you need to have a few moves ahead, or to at least think a few moves ahead. And you know, if you plan those and if you write them down, invariably when you get to the back end of those 3 or 4 or 5 moves, they'll have looked a little bit different. But having that framework in place, basically as a series of goals, I suppose. That's a key part. And that to go back to when I said to you before, you know, that physical performance, that athletic development, that's the base level of performance. The sort of mental, for me, I suppose, what I've discovered, and you know, what I've been able to make impact with certain players that I've worked with as well, is the mental side of performance, and that you have those goals, that you have long-term goals, medium-term goals, short-term goals, connect those goals across horizons, and they kind of drive your action now. And you know, we had that conversation on the side of the pitch here when you were over a couple of weeks ago. We talked about athletic performance and rugby, and so the game went pro in '95, and over the next sort of 10 years the shape and physique of players completely changed, because as professional athletes now, they were in full-time programs, they were getting strength and conditioning, they were getting nutrition support, everything just got more physical, faster, more powerful. But it's not but. It's not that we've exhausted that now, but it's as I said to you, on the side of the pitch, it's not, that area is not going to revolutionise performance once you're doing it regularly. Mm-hmm. So then the headroom in performance becomes, I think focus is probably a good word for it. The headroom in performance becomes focus, so you're not doing a little bit of this, a little bit of that doesn't quite go far enough to go anywhere good. The same over there, but that you have a goal that's close enough that you can focus on it, that leads to another goal that's a little bit further away, so you know what it is, but you don't have to focus on it, that goes ultimately somewhere where you want to go. And I've kind of lost my train of thought, but that's the next level.
Yeah, 100%. And I think it's so important to have, like you say, like to have a goal, or know where you want to get to, or know where you're going, and have that picture in your mind. Like, I'm sure when you were going into your first day in DCU, or when you kind of thought about that Leinster thing, like you probably saw yourself doing it. Like in your mind, you thought about yourself being that intern at Leinster.
Yeah, 100%.
You know? Yeah, so you were, like you say, that's a couple of steps ahead, but you got that picture in your mind. Like you saw yourself like working in Leinster, even though you're 2 years away. And it allows you, once you get that picture in your mind, it kind of gives a mental clarity, because it takes away a lot of anxiety, I think, because you don't need to, a lot of the worry I find, or have found in the past, say when I didn't have that, know where I was going, you're kind of day by day just floating about and like, oh, I'm working hard here or there or whatever. But once you have a clear picture, things become easy.
And the picture is really helpful. Like, I wouldn't say that I was a very sophisticated goal setter back then, but at least I had a goal. Now, I definitely wasted a lot of time and meandered around a little bit in the middle, but the fact that you're in college and as part of that will give you a bit of structure. So it gives you, just work through this module and then go do that, sit those exams, do this job application, we'll support you in this way, and you'll do it, right? But there's other scenarios where you don't have that level of structures. You just kind of create it for yourself. And it's funny, like I'm kind of in a back and forth conversation with a player in here at the moment, and he's a high performing player. He's unbelievably talented. He's a regular starter for a team that is doing well in one of the top leagues in the world. He's a genuine athlete. He's got all the skills, but he's no process. He's no performance process. Or at least it's not as well developed as he would like. Now he's the one who recognises that as being the next level for him. So it's and he actually approached me about it as being, well, what can I do to get this better? And his question really was, what have you learned from being around, top performers who have been successful at Leinster? He's new in the environment. He hasn't been around for that. He hasn't been a professional even for 2 years. But I suppose it's just so funny to me that you can get to that level of the game without having this thing down. You're kind of looking at him going, wow, you're going to blow the roof off this when you get this down. And he's young, so I'm excited about what he's going to do.
Yeah, it's class when you get people with growth mindsets that are eager to get better coming to you like that, isn't it?
Yeah, no, it is, and because he's done so well, so the program delivers a certain amount to you. It delivers your sports science support and your training and your rugby content, and that's great. But you kind of have to fill in the gaps a little bit yourself. So when somebody comes to you and they're like, I need to fill in these gaps, then and when, particularly if somebody comes to me, considering that I have the idea that this is the headroom in performance, it's not about the 1% gains of, we'll squat this way, or we'll squat to a box, or we'll stick a couple of plates under your heels to give you a lift, or not to denigrate sports science and training science at all, but as I said, I think it's going to be nip and tuck, and I think this stuff could be I think it will be the next revolution in performance.
Yeah, and so when you talk about
we're already seeing that.
Yeah, and so when you talk about like putting a process around it, something I talk about in the book, my new book, is like planning your week and then planning your day. And is that kind of what you're saying, like with them outside of your rugby, like just like what everything else looks like?
One of the things, obviously, rugby works week to week, right? So you can that process of goal setting, having an ultimate goal, and then a sort of a medium-term goal and a short-term goal to what you should do right now, connecting those horizons together. That's just the way that I like to envisage it. You can look at that in a big sense, and you can do that for like your rugby career, you can do it for your life if you can look that far down the road, or you can just do it for a week. And the ultimate goal of the week being that you perform on Saturday, right? So then kind of a cool way to look at it then would be, can you theme the days? So like a typical rugby training week, we train Monday, Tuesday, off Wednesday, train Thursday, captain's run Friday, and then go play on the Saturday. So it's like, first of all, you need to plan the arc of that journey to where you're going on Saturday, that big performance. And it's like, where do I need to be by the time Monday's over? Where do I need to be by the time Tuesday's over? Where do I need to be? What do I need to do on Wednesday to tee me up for where I need to be by the time Thursday's over? And where do I need to be on Friday in order that I can go and do what I came to do? And then that sort of idea of what your progress should be will tell you what you should do underneath. Is that a fair way of describing that? And then you just plan your action steps. So like, for example, you could say, by Monday evening, I need to be fully clear on what my role is. Fully clear on what my role is for this team. So there's a bit of learning involved in that. There's obviously some reps. There's probably conversations with players, with coaches to get that right. Which would mean that by Tuesday, you can just come in and train with that intensity and abandon that you want to be able to train with. And then by Thursday, that you'll be intense. You have clarity, accuracy, and intensity. That's what Nigel Carolan always talks about. So you can nearly categorize it that way. Monday's clarity, Tuesday intensity, Thursday accuracy. By the time we get to Friday, I've pieced those together and go do it. And you'd be familiar with the clarity, accuracy, intensity from having worked with Nigel.
Yeah.
I didn't quite make that connection to what we were just talking about there, but that's a way of looking at it.
Yeah, that's class. And that's another thing with like getting into the flow state or being your best on a Saturday is like not being worrying about plays or not being worried about your role or not worrying about all that other stuff that can be going on. You
Right.
know that. So when you get to a Saturday, you can just play.
Yeah, it's done. And you have that momentum, and you don't separate the game from the prep. It's so let's say you want to have your clarity on Monday, so you know you're going to have some core tasks that you do, review of the previous game, preview of the next opposition. Then you're going to have some bespoke tasks that you have to do, specific conversations that you have to have given what's coming up. But when you go to bed on Monday, you've got that clarity. And then Tuesday, you just make sure that you train at such a level that it just keeps your physical conditioning and fitness where it needs to be. So now, by the time you get to Tuesday, you're fit enough, and you've got like that temporal fitness, that contemporary fitness. So even though you might be generally fit, if you have a couple of weeks where you don't train at a really high intensity, you lose that edge. But if you've got it by Tuesday evening, you're going to have it. You're going to have it on Friday or Saturday. You've got that clarity. And then when you string it together on Thursday, it's nearly like confidence builder. And then you've got momentum. And the game then is just the 4th, 5th action, or the 10th or 12th or 20th action of a bigger whole. And the one game is just a microcosm of the season, which is a microcosm of your career, and you just keep going. And I just think that's a cool way of looking at it. And what's the word? You can alleviate yourself a lot of performance anxiety by just being like step by step by step.
100%. I love that because another big mistake I feel players made, and I've made it 100%, is what I made in the past when I was young, is you see a game as just this massive thing. It's like the biggest thing in the world. And it's like when you're training like throughout, like I say, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, when you're training throughout the week and you're doing stuff throughout the week, it's just, you're just doing it, but the game is always there and looming large, and it's always, whereas it is just another thing. Yeah. It's not actually, it doesn't need to be bigger than your training on Monday.
No.
And when you just have it as another thing, as you said, it relieves so much of that anxiety and prep.
And the key is to connect your preparation to your performance. So there's a lot of guys who are just preparing because they've been given this is what a scripted preparation looks like. And if you're in a team, it'll be done for you because, if nothing else, I'm going to write a schedule and send it out to you, and that tells you where you have to go. And then when you get to that place, someone's going to tell you what to do. But so here's an example. I had a conversation with somebody outside of rugby this morning, a different athlete at a really, really high level. And one of the questions, it wasn't what the conversation was, one of the questions he asked was, he can't get continuity in his morning routines. He's doing this morning routine, and I know you're all about morning routines, but where he does mindfulness and a couple of other pieces, but the mindfulness was the thing that we talked about. But he can't get continuity in it, he said, like less than 50% of the days. And then you ask him, well, why are you doing it? And he's like, well, I just know it's best practice. Well, that's why you can't get consistency, because you haven't connected that to your performance yet. And when you do, that's when it will start to come. So then the conversation goes in that direction. And I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, so 100%. So that's huge as well. Getting an understanding and seeing, like a common enough one. But I was a player messaged me today about meditation, and like I was just talking to him about starting a meditation practice in the morning, and he was just saying like, oh, I'm stepping up to this level and I don't even really feel nervous, and I think the meditating is really helping. And he himself, like I was talking to him about meditation, I was trying to explain how it will help,
right?
And I sometimes find that difficult, trying to explain how you will feel and really to convey that to people. But it was funny, a couple of weeks later was like, he linked the two.
Right.
He was like, oh, I've been meditating, and it's funny, I've just been called up to the second team in university, and he's a first year at one of the best universities in the UK.
Okay.
And like 18, and he was like, yeah, I'm not even nervous, and so that's linking the two. So now you understand that the meditation is actually helping. You start to see it. That's
Well, I actually have it. You actually helped me to clarify this in my head. And the last time you were here and we were chatting on the side of the pitch, because I probably would have said, meditation really helps me. Like, there's a science behind it about what it does to your nervous system, and that's great. And experientially, it's been really helpful to me, but hard to say why, right? But I connected it after we spoke, because everything I'm talking about, that sort of mental side of performance, about having a long-term goal, breaking it up in intervals, making sure those things are connected. It's about orientating you towards what you want, but then driving you into the present, right? That's what, and then something, I can't remember what you said, but it was something to do with being able to focus on your breath. So then that's a symbolic tool for being in the present, and it's just like an accelerator of exactly the same thing. So two mechanisms for the same thing was what I came to. So that's probably the best I can do with that now, but it kind of occurred to me over the last couple of weeks. And that's why they're valuable, because they keep you in the present. They alleviate you of anxiety, because you know what you're doing right now points towards where you want to go. So it's the best thing you can do anyway. And your meditation, apart from all the physiological benefits, reminds you of that. So that's that's one interpretation anyway.
Yeah, it's so good. And morning routine, what's yours at the moment?
So it hasn't changed in about 2 years. So I've been building up my meditation. So we would have started that in Leinster with Daniel Davey, who ran our nutrition program, but also did some other performance stuff for us. And that was when I got into it. And then there's a couple of nutritional pieces. One that I picked up from Peter Tierney, just an antioxidant shot, which I like. Don't ask me to explain the ins and outs of it, but it's a process I like going through on Sunday night. It's just making the shots for the week, and every morning doing that. And then the last one is the one that everyone's doing at the moment. So I read Wim Hof's book at the start of this year. He makes an unbelievable case for cold. Just finishing the shower on 2 minutes of cold. That's the morning routine. And I like that because it means you've done something hard at the start of the day. And in Glasgow, that's hard, to hit the cold button and it's -9 degrees outside. But that gets you into a flow of doing hard stuff. It really does build momentum. That's the routine at the moment.
Yeah, I love the cold shower. Like you say, it's something hard, and it's funny as well. You feel unreal after. Like, you feel the energy it gives you is crazy. Like, you wake up tired, obviously, but the energy, you come out of it like as if you've been at a rock concert.
Yeah, you're tingling.
Yeah, and then it's funny then also the people don't understand that it's always hard. Even if for me anyway, even though I've been doing it for years, every morning,
very quickly.
I do it every day. I just say to myself, but every morning it's like, I just go straight cold. Like, I step in straight cold, just cold, and I wash myself in the evening, or I don't even. It's just cold water, and I don't shampoo or any of that. Just straight cold, but every morning before I go in, it's still like, and I'll kind of potter around the place, and I'll kind of, and there's like, just bring it in there.
Yeah. But then that's another example of, don't ask me to explain the science of this, although I think the Wim Hof book does a decent job of it. It's somewhere your breathing kicks back in.
Yeah.
The way to get through that initial shock is with your breath. It happens pretty quickly. It actually happens pretty quickly. It's like 3 or 4 breaths. You can feel your heart rate start to come down. You can feel yourself start to self-regulate your temperature. Which is, might be an overstatement, but certainly handle the cold temperature better, and with that then you're just starting to piece a few things together, like the cold breath, so.
Yeah, 100%. And it's a breathe. Yeah, once again, breathing. Like you say, meditation. What I try or kind of explain to people is that meditation is like practicing being present. So like the mistake people make is they think like, oh, I tried meditating, but it doesn't work for me. Not for me, because you do once or twice or 10 times, and your mind keeps racing. But it's just the practice of bringing your focus back to your breath. And then the cold water, same thing. It's like you have to really, you take one big, and then
you have to be in the moment. Because when you're cold, it's the only thing you're thinking about. Oh, Jesus Christ, that is cold. Yeah. No, I get it.
And that's the correlation to on the field, is like when, when things aren't going well maybe or whatever, is you can just go back to your breath and you can just be present and then focus on, like say, be in the moment with the cold water. But like in a game, just be in the moment then and just think like, what's important now? What am I doing now? And just breathing and just giving it all to what you're doing right now. Yeah.
No, I agree with that. But I think there are layers to the same thing. Like I don't think... Well, it's not that I don't think that this almost seems obvious to say, but if you know you're underprepared, there's no amount of breathing that you can do to alleviate the anxiety of knowing you're underprepared. If you know you're not fit, there's nothing I can say. So that's one of the things, and Franco talks about that as well. He wants players who are fit, not because of fitness in and of itself, but when you're fit, you're creative because you're not worrying about what your body's going to do. You're just making cool decisions and doing the best thing you can do. When you know you're not fit, you're in worry mode about how you're going to survive whatever sport you're doing the next set in rugby, or
100%.
How you can do a little bit less in this action here so you'll be able to do the next action instead of just full engagement at all times.
That's a great point he makes. Yeah, because you can go all in. You can just immerse yourself in it when you're at your peak fitness.
Yeah, and that's the conversation you have with players, especially guys. It's one of the things we have in place here, that for return, the players who've been injured for a while, they have to pass a broncho test. So they have to pass a certain standard of broncho test that's set at the start. And players get frustrated with that because they feel right, they feel good, and this might actually be they're not injured anymore, they're good to play the game. And it might actually be the last thing that's holding them back. It's like, no, you have to hit 445 in a broncho, and they get 449. It's like, you have to do it again before you can go back training. It costs them a training day. They get very frustrated. That's what players want to do. They want to train and play, not do fitness tests. But that's the point. I wish I could get better at navigating these conversations with players. The point is not for the sake of ticking a box. It's not for the sake of the numbers. Not to make my stats look good. It's good fit players or creative players. It's not that it's not to become a fitter player. It's that you become a better player because you're fit. And yeah, that's going to be my line, I think, the next time I have this conversation.
That's brilliant. I was just, as we were chatting before, and I was doing a talk in Roscrea, and after someone had said they were coming back from injury, and they were like, I'm coming back from injury, anything, I'm just unsure about coming back to the field or anything you can help with. And one thing I was thinking about is being fully fit, because, at all those other levels, you can sometimes get rushed back.
Right.
You have a shoulder injury and it's like, we've got a big game, and you get rushed back, you're needed, And that can play on your mind, because you're not right.
Yeah.
And this is a completely different level. Like, you're bringing it, Glasgow, have set in place a system whereby we know that you're going to be 100% firing when you get back onto the field.
Yeah. Return to perform, not return to play.
Yeah.
And it's it's not unique. The best clubs do it. Leinster do it. They call it return to perform. They have standards, not necessarily the same standards, but the point is that when you're back out on that pitch, you'll be killing it, not survive. But you need that to be supported at all levels. You need a head coach who's willing to give guys that time. And we have one, so we're lucky that we get to do that. But it's also a massive I believe it's a massive uplift to the team performance, that the standard of guys who are coming back in brings the standard up, not down.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, I haven't really heard of that return to perform, but I love that, and it's helps the players. 100%. Even though they're probably frustrated, like you say, frustrated at the time. It's like, I want to get back on, but
Yeah, and look, there's nuance to that, and there's exceptions and everything else. But as a way of thinking about injuries and rehab and that type of thing, that's a good way to think about it.
Yeah. And you mentioned at the start, you were saying about you playing sport and didn't really, you bounced around or whatever, didn't really, but then, as you were saying to me before, you were a professional boxer for 3 years. So chat to me just about your like sporting background yourself as like as a player.
So I did the usual like kid stuff, played football and Gaelic football, and, ran track and stuff like that as a child, like athletics. But got into boxing in sort of started competing, I think 2011, and did that for. I started competing. I'd say no. I started competing when I went to DCU, so 08, 09, as an amateur, obviously, and then in 2016 there was a bit of kind of a rejuvenation of Irish professional boxing. A big promoter came in, and they wanted to rejuvenate the scene in Ireland, which was great. But all the top guys, like the guys who the Olympic elites and that type of thing, already gone to the UK. They all go to the UK and the US because the infrastructure is not really that well developed. But so what that opened the door was for guys like they needed to drop down the next tier in order to rejuvenate the scene over there, and open the door for guys like me. So, well, yeah, I had a chance to fight professionally between 2017 and 2020, and it was brilliant. Boxing York Hall, great experience. Definitely being on that side of it, as opposed to coaching, added another sort of layer to my understanding. Also got to, I was a bit older, so 2017 I was 27, so it was my last roll of the dice. That sort of 3-4 years. Boxers go a bit longer, but a lot of the guys that I was coming up with, training with, were young and good, like 21, 22, 23, and are still going. And so you're in that sort of high performing environment. You picked up a lot from them, and even like that sort of wellness recovery side of things that really wouldn't have been in the mainstream when you and I were coming up, when you and I were 18, 19. Guys of that age now, even in sports like boxing, which in Ireland is not massively cutting edge, or on the pro side anyway, it's there. It's funny, like people are getting way more attuned to that.
And so, what was that like? You were in DCU. You started competing. So you're doing like amateur. You're training probably 3 nights a week. I boxed as a kid as well for a few years. Yeah. I won a Connacht title, but then there was rugby.
Did you?
Yeah, but there was rugby trials.
That's class.
And it's funny. It's funny. I look back. The boxing coaches were. I didn't get on with them. I was like 13, 14. I didn't get on with them, and I remember after I won a couple of fights, he was like
tall as a 13-year-old.
Yeah, and heavy and heavy. So there wasn't as many. Like some of the guys your size, there was so many. Like they'd have
Lots of them, yeah.
they'd have. I only had to win a handful of fights to win the Connacht title, whereas some lads would have to win probably 15, or there'd be far more.
I know what you mean, but no, it's a great thing to have.
Yeah, but so when you got into it in your early 20s, and then so you were competing as an amateur, and from what I remember, it was intense. When I was a kid, it was like 3 nights a week boxing, rugby, Gaelic, all that was far like 2 nights a week, but they were, and then a weekend you'd be at it again. What was your schedule like?
Yeah, it was pretty much like that as an amateur. It was when I started taking it more seriously in the build up to turning professional, and then as a professional, that was when, it just put a lot of pressure on a lot of systems. So you train twice a day, 4 or 5 days a week, and still I was senior athletic performance coach with Leinster at the time. So you got these two environments which are demanding and relatively high performing. And that was when I got really slick on my morning routine, and really good on like nutrition and bedtime and recovery, and just making sure that everything was right and being really well organized, which is it's one of the biggest uplifts to the quality of my life now that I just had to get down on that plate in that time, just because there was demands everywhere at the same time. So yeah, it's something I push as part of, let's say, as part of a weekly preparation routine that we talked about. That you're really, really well organised around the pillars of that. You know what they are.
Yeah, and so we chatted a bit before on the field that time, but so when you were pro and like you're training twice a day and you're working full time in Leinster, chat to me about those days.
In terms of schedule?
Yeah.
So it was 4 a.m. start, and so that you could usually you could train before work, or very lucky obviously, because in terms of your athletic performance and that type of thing, I was going to work in a world class facility, so you could do a lot of your athletic performance there just before work. And then again, Leinster were very supportive at the time. You used to leave work at 3 o'clock every day, so you spend your afternoons out in Inchicore in our rush gym. It was it was a really challenging time. It was a really good time. I really enjoyed it. I learned loads out of it, and it was when I got my morning routine down to where it is now as well. That was when mindfulness became a big part of my life. Daniel Davey was bringing in with Leinster. It wasn't so prominent on the boxing side, but it was something that definitely helped me to stay in the right frame of mind to balance everything that was going on. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, probably the reason why you start doing a lot of this stuff is not the right reasons, because you think it's better. Like that kid said to me this morning, it's like, well, I do mindfulness every day because it's best practice, right? And that was definitely why you start doing that. But at some point it dawns on you, wow, this actually really is helping. And then the things that become really hard, like the idea of doing mindfulness for meditating for 20 minutes or half an hour back then, it's like, no, maybe 8, because you're kind of just going, oh, I wish this was over, so it was done. It's a task. But now it's totally different, because you see it as such an uplift to your performance. So it's kind of like the more time you can find to invest in it, the better.
100%, and it's you don't understand the value of it. When I started out, it's like, oh, 10 I haven't got 10 minutes. I don't have 10 minutes in the morning. It's like, I'm busy.
Yeah.
Like, I've got this. And, like, you don't understand. But for me now, I haven't not meditated any morning for 3 years or so, because just my days are better.
You're that consistent?
Yeah. Wow. Now, might have missed a day or two here
or
or there, but I genuinely my day is way, way better when I do. If I have to miss something later in my day, or, days are not usually that busy where I can't do 10 minutes or 5 minutes.
But the reverse is also true. If you've got an awesome practice built up, and that's kind of helping you to stay in a relaxed performance mindset, then you also don't panic about the morning when you wake up and something happens and you're like, all right, I have to can that for today, but it isn't going to affect me.
100%.
And again, I'll just go back to the conversation that I had this morning. This guy's talking about, I've got a morning routine, mindfulness is in there, but I'm less than 50% diligent with it, right? But one of the other things that he had in his kind of workflow would have been 2 minutes or 5 minutes or something of breathing before training, just to try and shake off everything that's come before in that day and just be in the right spot. But where we got to, and it's like, well, you have this in your morning routine as a sort of a general mindset tool, but you don't. It's not a solid practice yet. So how is it going to be an effective tool for you to separate your training block of the day from the rest of your day? The first thing you have to do is just build a real general practice, see what it can do for you in a general sense, and then start to apply it on a more accurate basis. I don't know if that's a fair way to think about it, but that was the view I came to. Because otherwise it's a task list. It's a task in the morning that you're not really connected to. You don't see it as connected to your performance. You don't really want to do it. And it's another task then before training. as opposed to an uplift in the morning and an accurate uplift then just before training. And so I think you got to fix the general before you try and fix the specific. Same as any tool, do you know? Any training tool that you would use.
100%. 100%. It's you're spot on, and it's like it's a tool you have. So like even like before I'd start a podcast or before anything, I'd like breathe, or like just take a second, just breathe, just connect to my breath, and like that's technically, I suppose, meditating for 10 seconds or 30 seconds.
Yeah.
But Jeremy, but it's not like before I do a podcast I meditate. It's not like a tick the box. It's just like we're running around, came to Glasgow today, like setting stuff up, running around, and then gotta do this, but it's like just take 30 seconds, a minute, wait longer, take a couple of minutes, just relax and just relax, get into the moment, kind of just be here and not be thinking about the outside world, and just breathe, and then I can do what I'm doing.
Yeah, and it's because you've developed a general practice which is not associated with, podcast about to start or a pressure moment in any way, shape or form, and you know what it can do for you, and then you just naturally apply it at the moment when it's needed. But before you develop that general practice, just trying to induct it as best practice here, there and somewhere else, I think it's like having an extra task to do.
I did the tick the box for a long time.
Yeah, so like...
Yeah.
I mean, and to be fair, that was how I came to the conclusions that I'm at now, or that's how it came to be helpful to me. So it's not bad. It's not wrong to go that way, but it's hard. It's hard.
For sure. And it's funny. It's like with the cold showers. I did the tick the box for a while. It's like you don't after day 1, day 5, day 10 be like, oh, I could tell you all the benefits, and this is life changing, and this is so great, and I love this. It's like, no, you're like, I don't know about this. But for me, what it was is, be it in any of these things that are in the moment easier to skip. So it's easier to not meditate than it is to meditate. It's easier to not have the cold shower than it is to have the cold shower. It's easier to not stretch after your gym session than it is. True. And that's something I really need to work on, is stretching after my gym sessions.
Likewise.
But it's easy to not do all these things. But you just know that it just helps you more and more. You know what I mean? Like all these little things, and like this stretches, next things I really need to be copping on with, but all these things, it's hard in the moment, but then you feel better.
Yeah, I agreed. Can't agree more. I've nothing to add to that. Yeah. You're right.
And chat to me about the boxing. Like, how did you find that performing, and that was that a big step up from? Once again, you mentioned like you played football, you played this, that, the other, but like then you're a professional boxer.
Yeah, so boxing is not like other sports where you get to a certain level and then you go professional. Like there's elite amateurs and there's elite pros, and then there's different levels. So I was a long way off being an elite pro, but I got to be part of something that for a while was going somewhere good in Ireland, and it gave you insight into that. And like there were like Eric Donovan, who just recently retired, was coming up at the same time, through the same pathway, through a lot of the same events, and went on to win a European title last year before retiring. So look, it was exciting. It was exciting that group of guys in that time, with the opportunity that there was. We were doing something for a few minutes, and then fell down for various reasons. Obviously, it was a weird time in pro boxing in Ireland. A lot of stuff went wrong after the shooting at the Regency Hotel, and the sport in itself has its problems and challenges, and it turned out to not be sustainable. So, but for me, I got what I needed from it. It was in that period of my life when I had an opportunity to do it. When I retired, it was in the middle of COVID. We hadn't boxed for 6 months anyway, and I had an opportunity to come over here and do this, do the leadership role in Glasgow, and it was the right time. It was the right time. But what I learned out of that chapter and what that adds to my practice now is, I would say it's as valuable as my sports science degree or anything else. Maybe even more in some cases.
And how did you find before a fight? Like, how did you find those say 2 or 3 hours before a fight.
Yeah, well, that's the funny thing. People get surprised. People who aren't in boxing get surprised with it. So the way it works, a card, and you never know how. You don't know when you're going to fight because guys get knocked out. Fights you don't expect to go the distance go the distance. So you might get 10 minutes notice. It's like, oh no, you're on now. Or it might be like, no, you're on now. Your man just got knocked out. Go, go, go. So you're there, and you just have to get ready and stay ready for a couple of hours. So it's a different challenge than knowing exactly what time you're going to go on it. So yeah, I mean, I suppose probably didn't consider it as much at the time, but that kind of just being able to maintain focus when you're getting. This next fight's going to go quickly. Oh no, wait, no, it's going on. It's like, oh no, geez, your man got knocked out real fast. We're expecting you're up, let's go. Being able to stay in that zone and use some of the techniques that we've talked about was as I said, not something that I was probably as engaged with as I could have been. But
yeah, something I remember when I was a kid. As I said, I was like 13 or 12, 13, 14, around that age. And I remember, and the same before big rugby games, like feeling scared shitless. Like I used to, like just being so afraid. And I remember listening to Mike Tyson then talk about it. He's like, when I'm walking into the ring, I'm afraid. Like all that's going on. But then that you want to do it.
Yeah.
Look, I don't know. How did you find that?
I suppose boxing is a little bit different because it's individual, and it is a fight.
Like yeah, but that's the thing. Like you're going to fight. Like
yeah, but and lads say that people would say you get rugby players going, I can't imagine doing that. It's like I can't imagine trying to clean out a ruck. It's kind of whatever you're equipped for, and it goes back to preparation. If you're prepared for something, it doesn't bother you. When you look at something that you're not at all prepared for, it seems miles away. So preparation is everything. Everything that we've talked about that's kind of, it's not even off the beaten track, but the mindfulness side of things, anything that's not that mainstream, it's all preparation.
Yeah,
it's all preparation. So the more prepared you are, I remember in Leinster actually they used to talk about knowing ready versus hoping ready.
Sorry, knowing ready
versus hoping ready.
Oh.
And when you know you're ready, it's not just that you're more ready than the guy who hopes he's ready. It's that you have a clearer mind than the guy who's gone, oh, I'm not as clear as I need to be on this. I'm not as fit as I should be, or
Yeah, and when you've done the work.
Yeah, exactly. There's a massive, and that's kind of it. Like it's kind of, you can almost, if you've done the work, you can almost go, well, let's just roll the dice.
100%. And that's the kind of beauty of it. It gives you a mental peace. It's like, I've done all I can do.
Yeah. And you might still lose.
Yeah.
But that's kind of part of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's going back to, I think, with me personally, I haven't done rugby and boxing. The boxing, like being on your own, just adds that element of like, man, it's like nothing else. Like and rugby, you've played team sports, so but boxing, like the 3 2-minute rounds, what it was when I was a kid.
That's what it was, yeah. They've got to 3s now for.
It was like playing 2 rugby games back to back. The 2 of the hardest rugby games ever. No one has any idea. It's the hard, because even holding up your hands after round 2, round 3, even holding up your hands for me, and I was a bit heavy as a kid, but it was just so hard.
Yeah, it was like the guys that stay relaxed are the guys that are really high performers, but yeah.
That's good. How have you found Glasgow?
We really like it. So I'm over here with my wife, Claire. It was tough when we first moved over, more for her than for me, because I was coming to a new project that I was excited about, and I just came to work every day. It was difficult for us. We came over in the middle of lockdown, and Glasgow was quite closed. I mean, Dublin was too, but especially when you didn't know the city, it was very inaccessible. But now Now we're here 2 years. We love it. Live in the West End. Really, really nice neck of the woods. Glasgow's a really good club. One of the things about Glasgow that is different than Leinster, it's not better or worse, but it's different, is that a lot of Leinster's boys are local boys. A lot of our boys are also local boys, but much larger proportion of this team come from way further afield, or even different parts of Scotland, but Southern Hemisphere and that type of thing. So they're quite tight as a group because of that. Because you come over here, you don't know anybody, but you kind of inherit a group of friends a lot of whom have been through that same process. And I think for that reason they were really good to me and Claire when I came over. So it's been good. And as we said at the start, to have been part of something that was difficult but progressive. You're kind of going through a phase of incremental success, and now it's like we've had our first period where we've had exponential success for a while, but it's a cool thing to be part of. It just keeps building your kind of understanding of performance and what goes into it and how things get done, or how things get done well. Do you know?
Yeah. And why did you decide to move across, make the move over?
So it's a chance to do the head of performance role instead of being a senior athletic performance role. It's a golden opportunity because, it came up mid-season. So as somebody who'd never done that role and had been unproven, to be able to go to your first role at a relatively big club like Glasgow in a major city and so on was you wouldn't normally get that opportunity. So a certain set of factors aligned that meant that it was perfect. So far, I've really enjoyed it. I learned a lot from it.
Good stuff. And was there ever not imposter syndrome, but something like, do you feel you're ready, or like when anyone is stepping up? Something I think about is, and I've heard this just many times, that you always got to you can't be ready. You got to go for a leap to move forward. And it's kind of similar with playing. Like you mightn't always feel fully comfortable at the next level, but you get an opportunity, you just got to go for it.
First time you get to even train with the seniors, and then the first time you're going to come out, you're going to be 24th man, and then the first time
you never really feel ready. I don't know, but how do you think about that, or how do you feel?
Yeah, it's probably true everywhere, but I definitely felt, in that first, or even right up to now, but particularly in that first year, you definitely feel like your learning is being accelerated, because it's not that you stop learning, but you're encountering completely new scenarios. In your role, you're dealing with different people and you have different types of relationships, and maybe you deal directly with a head coach instead of with a head coach via your head of performance. So that that's a big change. Obviously, we've had a change in head coach during that time as well, so there's a lot of learning in that. We run a very different program now than we did a year ago in a lot of ways. So it's almost like you almost have two accelerated periods of learning just along that axis of different bosses, which is great, because ultimately that's what this is. It's a learning chapter.
That's probably sport in general, or working in sport, very like just moving fast all the time.
Yeah, exactly. And the way this league is going over the last couple of years, South African teams coming in and stuff, just keeps getting bigger. It's really exciting. It's awesome, but it's it's dynamic.
Yeah,
which is good.
And do you travel with the team all the time?
Yeah, I have. I've done every game since, barring two. I've done every game since I've been here, and so it's, as I say, like in a 10-week spot, it can be pretty relentless. But on balance, we do. Rugby season goes up and down the international windows and so on. So that's, and to tie that back into what we've been talking about, planning those recovery spots is key. You need to plan your recovery spots first, because you're gonna work hard when it's on. You're gonna be full on in here and whatever else you're doing outside of here. So then you really work back at the start of the year and say, well, we're going to go on holidays there. I'm going to get time off here. I'm going to get home at that point. And then those become the focal point, or the stable points in the season. You have your games, they're all the stable points, and everything else, it's like you kind of have natural peaks and troughs then.
Yeah.
You know, so you can manage your energy.
Yeah, it's important too.
Yeah, massively.
Yeah, to have recovery, like in anything you do, like just have good recovery time and just have downtime, and even scheduling into your week if you can, and you perform so much better, you know, in anything you're doing.
So much better. Like, we're away for now a week next week, and even over the last couple of weeks, you can definitely feel like working on stuff like, you know, that kind of mental edge isn't there in quite the same way it will be in 10 days. So away for a week next week, when I come back, it's almost like that. It's the same as training. You build a foundation, you build loads of sets and reps, and you take your recovery time and you super compensate in the middle. So like anyone who's into training understands what that curve looks like. It works exactly the same. And there's science behind it, although I won't explain it well, but experientially, that's also how it works.
Yeah, and what's the, so super compensate in the middle? Well, I get the build a foundation, I get all that, like with training, with like weights or whatever. Then what's that you say in the middle?
So recovery, and while you're recovering, while you're not doing anything, you get super compensation. So your performance exists at a certain level. So this is back to weight training.
Yeah.
Performance exists at a certain level. You do reps of squat or whatever. And what happens when you do a lot of reps of squat? You get tired and your strength levels go down. So you go into a fatigue stage. And while you rest, your body super compensates. You bounce back, not to where you were, but to slightly higher than where you were before. But in order to do that, you need the rest. Otherwise, so if I train here, I go into fatigue. If I train again there, I go into fatigue and I keep going down into that cycle. So the key is, if I train here, to train again at the peak of the super compensation, keep going up. And yeah, it works as like that's as I said, that's first year sports science, but it's really valuable as an idea because it's essentially how stuff works across your performance domains.
No, absolutely, and it makes perfect sense. And I don't know, I correlate when you're talking there about that to sleep. Like for me,
Yeah, right.
Oh man, it's
that's exactly what it is. So that's exactly what sleep is, and then the stuff you do in the middle to accelerate the super compensation or to shorten the timeline. So, you know, with training it might be supplements, with recovery it might be ice baths. But essentially the curve exists, and what you're trying to do is spike it in certain areas or suppress it in other areas with all this other stuff. But your basics are your basics. You know, train, perform at work or whatever it is, whatever your mental performance is, fuel properly, sleep properly, and you'll be fine. If you do some other cool stuff like meditation, cold, supplementation, great. But get the basics right first.
Yeah, 100%. I even see it like, you know, I don't know, when you're younger in college, you're like pulling all-nighters or like, you know, like.
But and you can as well, like.
When you're younger, you can probably bounce, but you can probably bounce back quicker, or you can deal with things better. I think when you're younger, but still, like when you only sleep 4 or 5 hours, and I read the book Why We Sleep by Matthew Walker. He says like you're straight away behind the 8 ball. Like you sleep 4 or 5 hours in a night. The next day, you can't even think.
Right.
You can't. You're just, you know, and so I just know now. Once again, it's like even if I'm busy, it's just like 8 hours sleep, 7 hours. Okay, fair enough, 7 hours. But like that's something that's just important.
But do you find that the way you eat affects how much you have to sleep?
Yeah, eating is big.
I definitely find that, and I can't connect. I'm not a nutritionist. I can't connect the science. You know, there's a lot of people out there on social media talking about X, Y, and Z, but I definitely know certain things that like if I eat a lot of carbs, especially late in the day, I'll need to sleep a lot more. I'll feel a bit sore, and it's just experiential. It's not a recommendation or anything else, but it's just I've started to get quite engaged with how what I'm eating makes me feel the next day. And I'd eat well in a general sense. I eat well. Like it's not like you know, my diet would be by most standards good, but there's still things within that. Like, you know, like the carbs thing, for example. The carbs aren't bad necessarily, but if I eat them at the wrong time of the day, I won't sleep well, or I'll need to sleep way more.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean, and what I equate that to now is like people call it cheat meal or whatever, but
Yeah,
like
yeah.
me, like doing the dog on it is, I see it now the way I saw drink when I was younger. It's like if I eat a Domino's pizza and a Ben and Jerry's at night on a Friday night,
Your next day's going to be absolute trash.
horrendous. You feel horrendous.
Yeah.
So like, don't get me wrong, I do that from time to time. But I think about it the same way I would have then. It's like, all right, I'm going to go and have a feed of pints
Yeah.
as a young lad, and then it's like, I'm going to feel crap the next day.
You budgeted for it the next day.
I know I'm going to feel crap. But when I was younger, I didn't realise the food. I didn't realise that all that made me feel crap. Whereas now I know it's like, if I eat all that, I'm going to feel like crap.
Yeah. No, I don't know what it is. Like, I think, well, there's obviously so much more information out there now, isn't there? For like,
Yeah.
you know, the generation behind us are way better on alcohol than we were. Way better.
Oh, yeah.
So, and, you know, people are getting really tight on it. Like, again, as I said, like, a lot of it's not necessarily scientific, but if it's working for you, do it. Do you know?
Yeah.
Well, if it works for me, I do it. I'd say that's my. I'll stop short of giving nutrition advice.
Yeah, of course. So everything is play around with yourself. But that's one thing as well, the alcohol. I wish I realised when I was younger, like how much it affects you, I think.
Yeah, I suppose, you know, when you're young, it doesn't affect you as much.
As much, yeah.
You know, and you can get away with it. You probably just don't think about peak performance as much as you do later. I think it's probably just a natural arc of having been through that pathway and maybe been around some of the people that you have been, even more so now with some of the places that you're visiting and people that you're spending time with, you know?
Yeah. I suppose it's, probably maybe a bit of your job as well is trying to explain to those younger players who, you know, like if a younger person doesn't stretch or if a younger person doesn't eat well or if a younger person doesn't sleep well or they're drinking, like it doesn't really catch up with them as much. But I'm sure, once again, it's not my area of expertise, but I'm sure if they live the right way, that they'll still see, obviously. They'll still see the gains.
A lot of that's about the environment as well. Like the environment here is it's competitive, it's demanding. Like you really can't be coming. I don't think you would come in here other than be able to give your best because it just wouldn't work. You know. So it's actually quite a cool thing to be a part of because you're automatically held to account for that standard just by what's happening around you. You know, that's a key thing I think in environments, in the environment of teams that perform consistently, which is what we've started to see a little bit of here this year. So
yeah, and it can be demanding, like it is demanding, but it's enjoyable. It's so I've found, like when I think back to when I was younger, it's so enjoyable being in high pressure, high demand environments where you need to be your best and you're pushed to be your best. Because even though that some people could look at that and be like, oh, that's very stressful, but you want to be, like when you were boxing early, you want to be being your best, being pushed to be your best. I don't know, there's something with that.
Yeah, no, I did. Like, I suppose the places where I've been most energized is when I've been around, you know, high performing environments where the demands are high. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, hey, good stuff. But cheers for jumping on and coming in on your day off. I really appreciate it. It's been brilliant chatting.
Oh, thanks for coming over. It's not. Really appreciate you coming over. So, I hope you get what you need from it.
Yeah. All good. Cheers.
Thanks, man.
Thank you.
Cheers.